So Marvel Studios has still been pretty quiet about what's actually down the line for their universe. We don't even have a solid slate of movies yet. All we know is they'll be getting Black Widow, Shang-Chi, second movies for Black Panther, Doctor Strange and Captain Marvel, a third Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and then at some point something with the Avengers again, an Avengers 5, a Young Avengers, a New Avengers, whatever, something like that down the line. We also know that we'll be getting Fantastic Four and X-Men related stuff sometimes with, we actually already have a rumoured Fantastic Four movie with Peyton Reed, the director of Ant-Man and the Wasp, but there's also conflicting reports saying that that's not true. But that's a bunch of stuff that we know is coming. But another movie we know is coming, one that will undoubtedly become a franchise, and possibly become as well loved as Guardians of the Galaxy, is The Eternals. And we already even have some pretty big people for the cast. These include Richard Madden, who's famous for playing the King of the North himself, Robb Stark from Game of Thrones. He's rumored to play the character of Icarus. Then we have Angelina Jolie, who's playing Cersei, and we also have Kumail Nanjiani playing an unknown role. But all this may mean nothing to a lot of people because simply put, the Eternals aren't very well known. They're pretty niche comic book characters, so who is exactly these colourful cast? Well, the Eternals were originally planned to make their first appearance in Avengers Endgame, or at least some of them were. We were supposed to get a flashback scene of some sort showing us a couple of them and their connection to the Mad Titan Thanos and all that sort of stuff, and that's probably going to be a lot of what the whole Eternals movie will deal with. Who these people are, how Thanos tied into them, who their species are. So in the comics there are two offshoots of humanity. Well, there are a bunch, but the two main ones we want to talk about here are the Deviants and the Eternals. The Deviants are mainly bad guys, and Thanos is one of them. They're generally disgusting and hideous people, and they've always been at war with their opposites, the Eternals, who are pretty godly and just all-around great people. I'm not entirely sure where the movie will go with this mythos, or even how deep they will dig, because while the Eternals will most likely still be deeply connected to Earth, I don't see them making Thanos also related to humanity in the same way through the Deviants, especially since the other refers to Earth as only a backwater planet in the first Avengers, kind of implying that no one really cares about it, it's not an important planet, but if Thanos' species came from that planet, I don't think they'd be talking about them in such that way unless they don't know that they're from Earth. But that said, there's probably still going to be some big connection between these characters and Thanos, especially since in Endgame they were still planning on having the connection, so I wonder where exactly the line will be drawn. The best way I can kind of describe these characters is that the Eternals are like the new gods from DC Comics, and Thanos and the Deviants are like Darkseid and Apocalypse. They were both created by Jack Kirby, and they were even created around the same time with Jack kind of jumping from Marvel to DC, creating the Eternals, and then the New Gods, and then the Deviants, and the Apocalypse, all this sort of stuff. Now, obviously, there's huge differences between the characters, but that's the general gist of things, is that they are more or less the same idea. The Eternals and Deviants were created as part of the Celestials' experimentation on Earth. There's a lot of this kind of stuff in Marvel. For example, the Inhumans were created due to Kree experimenting on humans from centuries ago. But we've already seen a lot of this Celestial-related stuff in the MCU. We first got wind of them in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, while this, when we were in the Collector's place and he was like telling us about the Infinity Stones and all that, we see one of the Celestials in one of those little video clips he's showing. And then we also got that heavily built upon in the second movie when we were introduced to Peter Quill's dad, Ego. Being a Celestial who did some experiments all across the universe, one being on Earth, which led to Peter, who was a half-Celestial himself. I don't think the Eternals will tie into or even mention the acts of Ego, mainly because, as far as I know, the Celestials kind of stay away from each other, none of them really interact with each other much, and they kind of all do their own thing. So, I don't think we'll kind of talk about Ego or what he did on Earth for a couple of reasons. The main one being that what Ego did also happened in the late 60s, early 70s, I can't remember exactly. But while the Eternals will have been around, they've been there, but they've probably been watching and being in some sort of hidden place for the better part of Earth's lifespan. Like, they've been around for 5 million years in the comics, so it's going to be weird that if they just showed up randomly like a couple decades ago. I just think it better just go with their original origin, which is make them from 5 million years ago. And the events of Infinity War and Endgame will probably bring them out of whatever hiding they're in, or into the forefront of the MCU, so our heroes can find out who they are. There is, however, one really interesting tidbit about the Celestials meddling with human evolution, and that is that led to the creation of the mutant gene inside humans, which leads to, mutants, X-Men, all those little characters. So just consider how close to the Eternals are to the X-Men's origin. And we can start seeing little hints of mutants in this movie. I'm not expecting full blown, oh, the Eternals created mutants or whatever, but I'm expecting little hints there, maybe some just little stuff in the ground to plant on later. Icarus is one of the two main characters that the Eternals will follow, the other being Cersei. He's been around for about 20,000 years and actually died pretty recently in the comics. He's a warrior who has been involved in hundreds of battles over the years, and he's defended Earth from the Deviants a bunch of times. Cersei is one of the younger members of the species, and but she's still been around for a pretty long time. Speaking of which, Cersei actually also died really recently in the comics. But it's going to be really interesting to see what Marvel does with these characters. I'm expecting the movie to delve pretty deep into their conflict with the Deviants, but this does beg the question on how much, if any, of Thanos we'll see in this movie. For this reason alone, I feel like maybe this should have come out before Infinity War. While I'm not opposed to having more Thanos post-Endgame stuff, I think that movie gave him a pretty great ending and great send-off, and I don't want his death to be cheapened by constantly showing up in more movies. It was a good stopping off point. Like, maybe they could have had the first Eternal movie, so this one come out just before Infinity War, set up Thanos, the Deviants, all that, then have Thanos die in Endgame, and then second movie of the Eternals can delve more into their path, but kind of stay away from the Deviant stuff, and then just kind of maybe even then plant some more trees for the mutants and that. What do you think? Are you excited for the Eternals? And what about mutants and Thanos? Do you think we'll see anything to do with either of those in this movie? But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and if you really enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. And thank you, and I hope that you have an awesome day.